think the challenge we have, Nate, is to go from a really strong startup ecosystem to a strong scale-up ecosystem. And, I'm hungry for us as a community to have more scale-ups and more breakout tech companies creating a lot of jobs. That's really the beauty of software is as you grow and scale, you create more jobs. And that's, really what fuels our economy.
Welcome to Off the Record, a podcast featuring leaders on IBJ Media's Indiana 250 list. I'm Nate Feltman, CEO of IBJ Media, which publishes the Indiana 250, a list of the most influential business people in Indiana. Welcome to Off the Record, a podcast featuring leaders on IBJ Media's Indiana 250 list. I'm Nate Feltman, CEO of IBJ Media, which publishes the Indiana 250, a list of the most influential business people in the state. Today, I'm lucky to be joined by Scott Dorsey, co-founder and managing partner of High Alpha, one of the most prolific venture capital firms in the state, and for that matter, in the country. High Alpha has invested in more than 90 software companies throughout North America and has raised nearly $400 million since it was founded in 2015. Scott became a pillar of the Indianapolis technology ecosystem long before High Alpha. In 2000, he and two partners co-founded ExactTarget, which grew into a digital marketing powerhouse before its $2.5 billion acquisition by Salesforce in 2013. At that time, that was the largest acquisition in Indiana history. Rather than disappearing from the local tech scene after the sale of ExactTarget, Scott doubled down on his support of the local tech economy and tech entrepreneurs by starting High Alpha. Scott and his team at High Alpha identify innovative tech entrepreneurs from around the country and help them build and scale their companies from High Alpha's offices on Massachusetts Avenue in downtown Indianapolis. And by the way, those are really nice offices.
Thank you.
Scott is dedicated to using his expertise to help those entrepreneurs, and in the process, he's committed to making Indianapolis a player in an industry that he believes has been too concentrated in places like New York, Boston, and Silicon Valley. Scott's also dedicated to giving back to Indianapolis and the state of Indiana in many other ways. One of his local initiatives, Nextech, is a non-for-profit that works with school districts to bring computer science education to students from kindergarten through high school. Scott has served on the boards of Central Indiana Corporate Partnership, TechPoint, and the National Venture Capital Association, among others. He's lent his expertise to Indy sports economy, serving as chairman of the board of the Indiana Sports Corp for 7 years. At his alma mater, Scott has served on the Dean's Advisory Council for the IU Luddy School of Informatics, and he's on the Global Advisory Board, the Kellogg School of Management at Northwestern University, where Scott earned his MBA. Scott, welcome to Off the Record podcast. So glad to have you with me today.
Thanks, Nate. Honored to be here.
Well, there's a lot to touch on, a lot of topics, and I'm excited to do so. But I always like starting at the beginning. And the beginning for you, if I got this right, you were born in Cleveland, Ohio. And as I understand it, your family moved around a lot as a young person. And I experienced something similar, so I can relate to that. But talk about the differences or the different places you lived and maybe the impact that had on you as a person coming of age.
Sure, my pleasure, Nate. So yes, I was born in Cleveland, where both my parents are from. And when I was 4 or 5, my dad joined IBM. And back then IBM's nickname was "I've been moved." To move your career forward, you really had to be willing to relocate. And that's really what happened in my life. So we moved from Cleveland to Toledo, to Charlottesville, Virginia, to Ramsey, New Jersey, and then ultimately Naperville, Illinois, great suburb of Chicago. And we moved every 2 years. And I really, reflecting back on that experience, that was important and transformative. For me, I got a chance to see my dad with a strong work ethic, advancing his career, starting to work in the world of sales, marketing, and technology. And then my mom being incredibly supportive as we lifted up our life every 2 years and started over. And then, I think as a young boy, I certainly learned how to make new friends and, how to adapt to change.
Yeah.
And I really loved it. And then, thankfully, my dad actually realized he had to kind of switch companies if we wanted to stay in one place longer than 2 years. So he actually made a career change just to allow my brother and I to stay in high school and kind of grow up in Naperville. So I was in 6th grade when we moved to Naperville and then kind of stayed there ever since.
Yeah, I know the process, just the need to meet new people, and you're forced to meet new people. It has an impact on you, right? I mean, you've got to fit in new circumstances, right? And when you're doing that frequently, it definitely has an impact on your ability to engage with people and make new friends. All those
100%.
things.
It's
Yeah.
tough to enter
Yeah.
a new school and a new
Yeah.
community. And I remember my dad would always sit my brother and I down and say, "What would you guys think about moving?" And we're like, "Oh boy, where are we headed next?" And it was a great adventure.
So you made it back to the Midwest. You graduated, as you mentioned, from Naperville Central in Illinois, and then you decided to go to Indiana University, which we share in common. And we've also shared in common. You went to the Kelly, now what's called the Kelly School of
Yes.
Business. How did you end up choosing IU as your destination for college?
Probably a similar path to many, certainly similar path to many. I think in the Chicago area, I knew I wanted to study business, so I was looking for a top business school. Love athletics, and I really wanted to go to a Big Ten school. And we toured actually Illinois, Iowa, and Indiana, and not surprisingly, just fell in love with the campus from 1 minute in. It was one of those just gorgeous days in Bloomington, and just everyone I met was nice, smart, welcoming. Thought the campus was absolutely stunning, and loved the combination of athletics and really, really strong academics and a great business school. And had to talk my parents into out-of-state tuition, which was kind of a big lift and a big stretch for my parents. And thankfully, they supported me, and we kind of collectively never looked back.
I'm trying to work backwards and remember like when you were at IU and whether or not they made it to the national championship.
We did. I was there from 85 to 89.
There you
So
go.
we grabbed
87.
the 87 national championship. Keith Smart hitting that big
That's
bucket
right.
against Syracuse.
I remember watching that all too well.
But Nate, I'll tell you, I loved my IU experience. I loved business school, got very involved on campus with interfraternity council. I was VP of Rush as a sophomore, and then later student foundation and steering committee. Met my wife, Erin. The greatest accomplishment of my experience is meeting Erin, and we've been married 30 plus years, and then we have 4 daughters, 3 of which have graduated from IU, and then our youngest is a senior in high school, hopefully headed down to Bloomington as well.
Oh, that's awesome.
And then I don't know if you know this, but I had an incredible opportunity to be this year's commencement speaker at my daughter's graduation in May, 35 years to the day of my wife and I graduating.
That's
so
special.
IU's been a really, really special place for me over the years.
How neat. That is really, really neat. So after you graduate from IU, you did some moving around, continued to move around with a company called Steelcase. But eventually you ended up back in Chicago and completed your MBA, as I mentioned at the beginning. When you decided to, after spending time with Steelcase, and you decided to move back to Chicago, to that area, was that an intentional move, thinking this is where I want to plant some roots? How did you decide to move back to Chicago, back to the Midwest?
It was that first chapter of my career was amazing. Steelcase, incredible company based in Grand Rapids, Michigan, and they had a 9-month rotational training program called PACE, where I got to work in every department throughout the company, and then they kind of shot me out to a field assignment in Denver.
Okay,
and then I moved to Phoenix, and then Southern California. And through Southern California, joined a smaller subsidiary of Steelcase called Metro that was actually based in Burlingame, California. And I started traveling up to Burlingame, started realizing what was happening in San Francisco with innovation and technology. And then growing up in Chicago, I had always dreamed of going back to school and getting my MBA at Kellogg. I always felt that Kellogg's values of teamwork and general management and collaboration really spoke to me and matched my style. So it was kind of a dream come true, actually, to move back to Chicago, go to Kellogg. And I was there from 96 to 99. Really, it's just the internet was coming of age. So it was a remarkable time to be a student.
It sure was. The late 90s were heady days in the internet world. So I read that as part of your MBA program, you and some of your classmates visited Silicon Valley, and that would have been, like I said, in the late 90s. And it sounds like that visit created some inspiration and maybe some ideas about where you might take your career next. Talk a little bit what inspired you on that visit and what you saw in Silicon Valley in the late 90s.
It really did, Nate. It was so neat. It was our capstone course. We were challenged to study the ecosystem of Silicon Valley and then essentially bring recommendations back to the city of Chicago, how we could drive more innovation, more technology, more entrepreneurship, the Silicon Prairie, if you will. And it was just a remarkable experience. We traveled out to Silicon Valley on a couple trips, met with Eric Schmidt, who's running Novell prior to joining Google, met with startup entrepreneurs, met with law firms like Wilson Sonsini that were very tech oriented, met with venture capital firms, all new territory for me. And boy, I came back just really determined to be a tech entrepreneur, that would be the next chapter of my career. And many of my classmates moved out to Silicon Valley, and then others, we found our way to try to build technology companies in the Midwest.
And so that was maybe a little bit of the genesis of coming up with the idea for ExactTarget, which, I'm going to do a poor job of describing ExactTarget, but email marketing is what people will say, but I know it's a lot more than that. But talk about when you decided to build this company called ExactTarget. Talk about what problem or what opportunity that you were working to solve.
Be happy to. So I married into this amazing family from Greenfield, Indiana. So Erin has two sisters, and they're married to remarkable guys, one of which is an amazing entrepreneur named Chris Baggett, who is my co-founder at ExactTarget. And my other brother-in-law is a spine surgeon. My father-in-law was an amazing family doctor. So literally, Nate, we'd get together over the holidays, and Rick and my father-in-law would talk medicine, and Chris and I would talk business, marketing, entrepreneurship, and how the internet would really transform business and transform marketing. And Chris really had the original seed of the idea for ExactTarget. His career was really centered around database marketing. Grew up with R. Donnelly, focusing on, print is the medium, but the underlying concept was the more you know about your customers, the more personalized and targeted and relevant your communications can be. And you can deepen a relationship and deepen brand loyalty. And Chris really had the vision for how to take the fundamentals of database marketing and apply them in the internet age. And then I was really fresh off of 3 years of just studying internet business models and, dreaming about how the internet would transform business. So in many ways, Chris had the domain experience, and he actually bought a small business and started figuring out how to use email marketing to connect with his customers. And he had to teach himself HTML and how to do SQL queries and manage a database. And he went way beyond what a typical small business owner would do. So that was really the problem we set out to solve. And in many ways, I was a prepared mind, having finished 3 years of case studies and thinking about new business ideas at Kellogg. But it was really Chris who was the visionary, the domain expert, and really knew the problem that we were setting out to solve.
Often, when you have a business partner, I've had this experience. When things are going really well, there's complementary skill sets. It sounds like you and Chris had very complementary, where you put them two together and good things happen. Is that
100%?
Yeah.
Chris is one of the brightest entrepreneurs and just people I've ever worked with, and he's definitely in the visionary category. He's always reading, consuming information, kind of looking around corners. And I'm definitely more the operator, kind of build the company, build the team, focus on culture. And we are a great pair and a great complement for one another.
Yeah, that's neat. So you spend the next 12 or 13 years
right.
Building ExactTarget, fundraising, growing organically and through some acquisitions, and then eventually going public in 2012 and becoming one of the first Indiana-based technology companies to be listed on the New York Stock Exchange. I'm sure you think of that. You were an overnight success, but I know, of course, it was a lot of hard work and grinding, I'm sure. Talk about what it was like building a company that eventually would go on to go public.
I'll tell you, Nate, it was just such an extraordinary experience for so many reasons. We started out as 3 first-time software entrepreneurs. Another amazing guy I'd worked with previously, Peter McCormick, who lived in Minneapolis, joined us as a third co-founder. We had no software experience, no technical background, had never raised capital, and we're trying to start wobbly email marketing software company, in Indiana. And at that time, our tech ecosystem wasn't very well developed, and the internet bubble had just burst. So there really was no funding to be had. So, to have that really be our beginning, and then go all the way to ringing the opening bell in the New York Stock Exchange and going on live TV with Jim Cramer, on CNBC. It was just a out of this world, kind of out of body experience. Only would have happened with just an amazing amount of support. So many smart, hardworking, dedicated team members, remarkable investors and mentors. And I felt so fortunate, Nate, that I felt like I was able to lead the company through 5 or 6 different chapters that really stretched me and allowed me to grow in ways that I never would have expected. And we had plenty of hardship too. I think a lot of times with a story like ExactTarget, you maybe think it's all up and to the right and everything goes smoothly.
Right.
And we had everything go wrong you could imagine, from system outages to cybersecurity issues. The go public story is kind of an interesting one. We attempted to go public in 2007, 2008. So imagine this, Nate. We were a small company. In 2007, we generated $48 million in revenue. And the next year was $72 million, a couple hundred employees. And at that time, software as a service companies were really coming of age, and many were going public. And we had only raised about $6 million in primary capital. So we were extraordinarily capital efficient and really in many ways bootstrapped the company. And we felt like going public was the right move to capitalize the company, elevate our status with larger enterprises. So we filed December 15th of 2007, and we were in the IRT theater with an all hands company meeting, and we filed live with our team so they could just feel the excitement and the moment. Well, then fast forward to early 08, all of a sudden, boom, financial crisis hits. There are no IPOs happening. The IPO window was slammed shut. So we were faced with a really difficult decision. Do you pull your IPO or do you stay on file? And I always felt that pulling the IPO would be a sign of failure or giving up.
Sure.
So we were determined we're just going to stick it out. So Q1, Q2, Q3, Q4, it's not going to happen. And little ExactTarget in Indianapolis wasn't going to be the first to kind of crack open the software IPO market. So early 09, we had all the burden of being a public company because we were having to update our S1, having to meet with Wall Street analysts, but none of the benefits, had no capital, no brand halo. And it was a really trying time for the company. We ended up raising private capital and staying private. And I really didn't want our team to feel that that was a letdown or a sign of failure in any way. So we created kind of an internal campaign called Better Than an IPO and really shared why this was really going to be better for our long-term interest. And thank goodness, it was the silver lining. Best thing could have ever happened is we stayed private and we were able to push the gas pedal harder around investment. So we opened offices all around the world. We started doing acquisitions. We stretched up to the large enterprise. So our early customers were mom and pop SMBs, pizza shops, dry cleaners, sporting goods stores. And the later part of our journey, we're serving Nike, Expedia, Microsoft, Bank of America, many of the largest companies in the world. So we ended up going public March of 2012. We were stronger, more durable, growing quickly, and just better prepared. So it was really a blessing that their first IPO attempt didn't work out. And then thankfully the second one was a big success. And I think a great sense of accomplishment for our team and for the community. Oh,
I am sure. And I remember it well. And I remember the community being incredibly excited to have a company from Indiana go public. So it's a fantastic story. Thanks for sharing that piece. I'm curious, you mentioned earlier that, you really were developing during a time when the tech ecosystem was just in its infancy here in Indianapolis. Was there ever a time where the partners said, gosh, should we think about moving this out west to a place like, or out East Boston or Silicon Valley? Because from a talent perspective or from a fundraising perspective, was that ever on the radar at all for you all?
We had many investors strongly recommend it or even make it a requirement of funding. But for us, we never really gave it a second thought. We were locked into the community and really focused on all the benefits one could derive from building a breakout technology company in Indianapolis. It was really interesting, though. Our Series A venture firm was Insight Venture Partners out of New York. Phenomenal investors, very, very bright, and located right on Fifth Avenue. And I remember signing the term sheet in 2004, thinking this could be the biggest mistake of my life. I didn't know if they would be excellent partners that really embraced us and helped us grow, or if they'd quickly look to replace me. And, I felt very vulnerable, as kind of a first-time CEO and first-time entrepreneur. And thankfully, it turned out to be a wonderful relationship. And they really helped me grow and develop over the years.
Yeah, that's neat. Well, I want to turn to a subject that I always thought from an outsider was really neat. And you already mentioned something about how you created culture and when that first IPO attempt didn't work out. But you had a really neat that I just remember seeing all these people, and they were talking about your culture, and they were talking about this orange culture. And one of the great writers of business, Peter Drucker, is famous for saying, "Culture eats strategy for breakfast." And so I bet you have a take on that. But I'm also just curious how you came up with this idea around orange culture and what it meant to you and your fellow colleagues, employees, because I remember it being a real thing back in the day.
Thank you. It's one of my favorite topics, Nate, and I love that quote by Drucker, by the way. When we started ExactTarget, we created core values, and I think core values are always the foundation to build great cultures. And our first core value was treat people well. And we wanted that spirit of humility and modesty and kindness, but we also wanted to pair it with ambition. And often those two don't fit together that well. So we wanted to drive a performance culture that had high ambition, but conducted themselves in a really caring and kind way. And I think in many ways that's the Hoosier vibe or Hoosier hospitality as well. And it also was, I think, much of the learning that I took from Kellogg. So we started really with core values, and often would hear over the years, "Oh, you have an amazing culture at ExactTarget. Everyone is positive, hardworking, focused on the customer, focused on working well with one another. There's something special happening." And you could feel it when you stepped into one of our buildings. And customers could feel it, which made it even more special. And when we were going through that kind of trying time in 08 and 09, credit to our CMO, Tim Kopp, he met with me and said, "I think we need to give our culture an identity or a framework. And I think we should leverage the color orange." And up to that point, Nate, orange had been our brand identity. And orange was unique in the world of tech, that there weren't many large tech companies that really had orange as their logo or their brand. So there was something to kind of feed off of there. But I was very skeptical. I really didn't want to create a culture that felt top down or felt too corporate. I think the richness of our culture, that it was that everybody lived it and believed it and felt it and reinforced it. But we kind of went with this Be Orange theme, this Be Orange framework. And it was one of the best moves we ever made, because it really did create identity. It created a vessel and words to describe the feeling all of us felt building this company. So all of a sudden, our onboarding program became officially orange, and we'd hire employees all over the world, and we'd fly every one of them to Indianapolis. Whether you were in Sydney or Melbourne or Tokyo, you flew to Indianapolis for your onboarding, and that became officially orange. And those team members remembered who else was in that new hire class with them. That became a cohort and a sense of identity. Same thing for leadership development. Our leadership development program became Leading Orange. And then as we opened offices around the world, we did 6 acquisitions, as you mentioned. Orange became kind of the thread, the connective tissue that stitched us all together. So our cultures were so different by function or department, or even by geography or by acquisition, but orange was kind of the big unifier. And a few things stem from that. So I started, right when we pulled the IPO, I had a number of employees say, "I just feel a little out of touch with you and what's happening in the company, and we're getting so big, I don't know everyone." And I made a pledge to our team that I would send a note using our software every Friday, rain or shine, update them on what was happening in the business, what I was working on, what I was thinking, what was going well, what our challenges were. And it became my Friday note. And for 5.5 years, Nate, I never missed a Friday. And my partner, actually, in authoring that Friday note, was Mitch Frazier.
Oh, is that right?
And Mitch and I would huddle every week. We'd sketch out a few ideas, and either he'd write the first draft or I'd write the first draft, and we'd collaborate on it. And the Friday note became so powerful because it gave employees a chance to send me an email in return, one-on-one, feedback, ideas. I would respond to every note. So even as we scaled up to a couple thousand employees, I still felt like I had a one-to-one relationship with the team. And then they'd lob in pictures and ideas of,
oh, that's neat.
We ran a 5K on Saturday and everybody's wearing orange, and ET gear, and the color orange ended up really spreading all over the world.
Yeah.
And in many ways, even after the Salesforce acquisition, and they acknowledged one of the, I'd say, the competitive advantages they really viewed and experienced with ExactTarget was our culture, that the color orange and the culture really kind of lives on. So we have a Facebook group called Orange Crush with a couple thousand people still posting ideas and family updates. We had a reunion last year. It was a 10-year reunion post-acquisition. Had over 1,000 people fly in from all over the world
Did you really?
just kind of reconnect with their friends. And in many ways, I feel like even though our company no longer exists, the culture still does. And that's probably our greatest accomplishment, I would say, and the greatest element of kind of the lasting impact of ExactTarget is that special kind of orange bond that tied us together.
Well, the fact that you had a reunion and you continue sharing with colleagues tells you that it was authentic and it was real, which is a great legacy. So congratulations on that. You mentioned it's been 10 years or so, maybe 11 years now, but you're public now, as the story continues, and all of a sudden, Salesforce comes knocking, and of course offers $2.5 billion for the company. Maybe that's not what they offered, but that's where it closed at.
We got there eventually.
Was it a hard decision for you and your partners to sell to Salesforce, or was it already? Sometimes companies kind of know what they're building towards. Was that already something that you all had discussed eventually would be a potential exit? But talk a little bit about that process.
It was definitely unexpected. I was really enjoying running a public company, which you don't hear very often. But what a privilege, even during the roadshow and then beyond, to meet with really, really smart tech investors and be able to share your company and your vision and what you've been working on so hard over the last 12 or 13 years. So I loved it. And we were doing really, really well as a public company. We were still growing north of 40% year over year.
Wow.
We were 5 quarters in. We had, met and exceeded Wall Street guidance every quarter. And things were humming along really, really nicely. Now, interestingly enough, Salesforce had always been kind of a big brother to us at ExactTarget. They were pioneering software as a service. They were focused on sales automation. We were marketing automation. And we just ripped a lot of pages out of their playbook of how to build a company in this new SaaS and cloud era. And they were our first partnership. So going back to that idea of database marketing, we needed to help our customers leverage data to make sure their digital marketing campaigns and communications were very, very relevant. So we built an integration with Salesforce even prior to their app exchange and partner ecosystem. And interestingly enough, Nate, they actually made a couple attempts at acquiring ExactTarget very, very early in our life and evolution. Thank heavens those didn't come to bear because it worked out much better for everybody down the road. So we had a really wonderful relationship with Salesforce. They put a bid in on the company, and when you're public, you have to take that very, very seriously. So we hired JP Morgan, who had helped us with the IPO, hired a law firm that had a lot of experience in public-to-public transactions, and then did a soft reach out to other tech companies that we had really strong relationships with. And we really weren't looking to sell. And I really thought along the way, 2 things were really important to me. One was joining forces with a company that there are no guarantees, but I had a high degree of confidence would double down on Indianapolis. A big part of our story and where much of our ambition ultimately was getting fueled was just we felt like we had the opportunity to do something really great for Indianapolis and great for the state of Indiana, and Governor Daniels and Jim Morris and so many incredible leaders kind of cheering us on.
Mm-hmm.
That was really important. So it was important to me that if we were to be acquired, the acquiring company would be really committed to Indianapolis. And then secondly, was hoping that we could create a competitive dynamic between a couple potential software companies, which we did, and the price would end up reaching a level where it just became really kind of a no-brainer for our shareholders and for our employees. And thankfully both happened. So Salesforce was the winner, but it was very bittersweet. I actually remember the last conversation I had with Mark Benioff when I felt like this was really, really going to happen. And it was very emotional. You're full of joy, but also kind of full of sadness because the company cares so much about it's going to change. In some ways for the better, but it's absolutely going to change from what you've become accustomed to.
Yeah, absolutely. So after the Salesforce acquisition, you become CEO of Salesforce.com Marketing Cloud.
Yes.
And I'm curious, after building your company and running the show. I can't imagine that was an easy process to now not be in complete control.
Yeah.
But talk about what that was like. You mentioned Mark Benioff. I've had a chance to listen to him. He's certainly an interesting guy.
Yes.
So I'm curious if you got a story or two, or what that was like working with Mark. But talk about that and remind me how long you stuck around with Salesforce.
I stayed a little over a year.
Okay.
So we were acquired in July of 13. And I stayed until August, September of 14. And you're right, Nate. I really didn't have, my board of directors was a boss, and our shareholders were who we were ultimately accountable to. But I really hadn't worked for a direct manager in quite some time. And a brilliant visionary like Mark it was really an amazing experience. He was so good to me, so kind to me. Really wanted me to continue to be CEO of the Marketing Cloud. Salesforce had done 2 prior acquisitions, a company called Buddy Media in New York and Radian 6 in Halifax, Canada. And we actually put all 3 companies together. So although those companies had been a part of Salesforce longer, the Salesforce Marketing Cloud really became the combination of all 3 companies. And I had the opportunity to lead that org, which was about 3,000 employees. And it was super important to me that the investment and the big bet that Mark and Salesforce made in ExactTarget paid off. Thankfully, Nate, boy, has it ever. Marketing Cloud revenues today are well north of $3 billion. And we were about 300 to 400 million at the time of the acquisition. Wow. So that's been a huge success. I wanted the integration to be very successful for our employees and wonderful for the community. And, I think all 3 of those, really happened. But working for Mark was just incredible. He is such a brilliant visionary, operates on such a global scale. We would have days where he might have lunch with President Obama, and then our one-on-one would be at 2:00 in the afternoon. So his calendar and schedule was very, very different than mine. But he not only is an incredible tech visionary, but he's also very good at just the day-to-day management of the business. So believe it or not, we'd have weekly one-on-ones, and we'd talk about my top 3 priorities, and he'd do everything he could to help me be successful. And he really was very inclusive with me. So I was a part of the Salesforce executive team. I was in every board meeting, and the experience was really, really neat. I literally have so many stories though, Nate. I'll share one with you. So we just finished the acquisition. He came to Indianapolis, and we did, big employee kickoff, and we were going to have one of our first kind of one-on-one meetings, and it was going to be over at the Conrad Hotel. So I zip over the Conrad. I'm ready for our one-on-one, and he's not there. And his executive assistant said he's over at the mall, and I should go Circle Center Mall, and I should go find him and track him down, and we'll do a walking one-on-one. I was like, okay, all right, happy to do that. And I found him. He was in the AT&T store speaking to a young sales representative who had no idea who he was, and he was just learning and just asking questions about their connected devices, their vision around the connected home. And he speaks a lot still today about the beginner's mind. And boy, did he live that, which is so impressive given all the success he's had as an individual and Salesforce has had as a company. And he just keeps reinventing the company, and now they're all in on AI agents and this AI revolution. And he just continues to impress. But for me, it was a neat experience, even for a short window of time to get a chance to work with Mark.
I got to, I didn't get to meet him, but I was at an in-person event for the All In podcast, and he was one of their guests. And so I got to in the auditorium with 2,000 other friends. But talk about a character and a lot of fun. I mean, he's just a fun guy to listen to, and he's a jokester, and I mean
bigger than life, Nate, and always full of surprises. So I'll share another quick story. We were in a board meeting, Salesforce board meeting, and he announced to the board we have a new director, and I'm really, really delighted to introduce our new director. And he opens the doors, and it's General Colin Powell walking in, our new board member. And General Powell sat next to me for the entire board meeting. And I was just in awe. And he was learning about software as a service, and we were learning everything we could from him. And then as luck would have it, he had a speaking engagement in Indianapolis a few weeks later, and I had a chance to host him and a chance for him to meet the entire leadership team. And so Mark just opened so many doors that were unexpected.
That's so neat. So it wasn't long after you left that Salesforce role after the sale that you got some of the gang back together from ExactTarget and started a new venture called High Alpha. Talk a little bit about what the inspiration behind starting High Alpha looked like.
You bet. So I didn't take much time off, kind of hop right back into it, got back to work. And, I think my criteria, Nate, for what I was looking for next was I wanted to find a vehicle to support entrepreneurs and founders, wanted to work with people that I respect and admire and, have great relationships with. And then third, if we got the first two right, do something really great for Indianapolis and Indiana and use High Alpha as a vehicle to kind of give back to our community. And that's really what we've done. And we began as a startup studio. We quickly paired the startup studio with the venture fund. And then kind of the third leg of our stool is called High Alpha Innovation, where we partner with universities and corporates to build their own startup studios and create more spin outs and more startup activities. So it's been a wonderful challenge. I've learned a lot. I like hopping onto new learning curves, and it's been a big learning curve. I really never set out to be a venture capitalist, and learning the world of investment's been a real eye opener. But it's been wonderful getting a chance to work with so many talented friends and new entrepreneurs and relationships, and hopefully do something really great for the community.
Yeah, it's really neat to see you decide to stay here, work with people that helped the ExactTarget become so successful, and then look for opportunities to support young entrepreneurs. So I know you're passionate about that. You're passionate about doing just that, investing and supporting people who have got great ideas, especially here in the Midwest. But I'm curious, for when you invest and have invested, are there some companies that you say, oh gosh, this could be the next great company? It could be another ExactTarget that could scale like you did. I mean, I know that's not easy. That doesn't happen every day. But it's so far, since you've been working with your partners at High Alpha, do you see some things that look really promising, especially here in Indiana, for example?
Yeah, for sure. Nothing would make me happier than to have more companies that become the next ExactTarget, and hopefully beyond. I think it'd be so great for our tech community. And in some ways, it's a little disappointing that we haven't had another big tech IPO in quite some time. So we're hard at work to try to make that happen.
Yeah.
And we have so many compelling companies and entrepreneurs in our community. I spent a lot of time working with Xylo, an amazing company in the SaaS optimization space. Just moved here to Monument Circle. They're over in the Salesforce Tower. Meta CX and my former CTO and good friend Scott McCorkle. So there are plenty of amazing companies, being built right here in Indiana. I think the challenge we have, Nate, is to go from a really strong startup ecosystem to a strong scale-up ecosystem. And I'm hungry for us as a community to have more scale-ups and more breakout tech companies creating a lot of jobs. That's really the beauty of software is as you grow and scale, you create more jobs. And that's, really what fuels our economy.
Yeah, on that front, I'm curious from your perspective. You've been obviously a driver of the indie tech scene for a long time. Are there things that we should be doing or could do that to your last point there that could help further fuel the next great entrepreneur or the great next companies that would be big job creators? Are there things we should be doing that we need, just haven't got to yet?
Yeah, I think we're doing a lot of the right things, Nate. TechPoint has been a real powerhouse for our state. Toph over at Elevate Ventures continues to innovate with Rally and strong direct investing motion. A lot of credit to Governor Holcomb for creating the Next Level Fund that's investing in venture funds who want to be here in Indiana and whose capital ultimately finds its way into many Indiana-based companies. I think we're very strong in the startup phase, the seed funding stage. I think the next challenge is to make sure the ideas are big enough and we're going after big enough markets that they warrant capital coming in from the coast, or even better, that we have more scale of capital in our community. And, I love working with CICP and Melina Kennedy and love the pillars of CICP. And I think that's an ongoing opportunity for us of how do we attach technology, everything that's happening in software and AI, to our other powerhouse sectors, farm and life sciences, logistics, transportation, and ag. And there's good work and momentum happening there, but I think there's a lot more we can do to make sure our identity as a tech community is leveraging all the assets we have in these other sectors.
Yeah. So it does feel like an opportunity. But I'd like to switch gears a bit and talk a little bit about the nonprofit that you started, Nextech, which focuses, as I mentioned in the intro, on Indiana students K through 12 having access to the tools needed to develop tech and computer science skills. Can you talk a little bit about the foundation of Nextech and what you saw the need there, and talk a little bit about who you're working with and what the outcomes have been
I'd
so
love
far?
to. I'd love to. Thank you for the question. Going back to the ExactTarget run, part of our Orange culture was giving back and philanthropy, and we had a very philanthropic minded team and workforce. So we started the ExactTarget Foundation, and we focused on 3 pillars: education, hunger, and entrepreneurship. And in many ways, we are a grant writing organization and a strong force of volunteers. Well, it's really interesting, Nate. When Salesforce acquired us, they have an incredible foundation, the Salesforce Foundation, that does amazing work globally and is, really done some incredible work here in Indianapolis. And it became a little confusing that we had the Salesforce Foundation and the ExactTarget Foundation. So right around the time that I transitioned out of Salesforce, we thought we had a new opportunity to kind of rebrand the foundation and sharpen its focus. And I was so lucky that Karen Jung, our CEO, was running the ExactTarget Foundation, and she was really excited about the next challenge, along with Stephanie Zurcher and Jill Van Ostenberg and lots of other talented ExactTarget veterans. And when we kind of canvassed the landscape, we saw a real opportunity in computer science education. And at the time, Nate, this is nine years ago, only 15% of high schools in the state of Indiana offered a computer science course.
Wow.
1.5. That was staggeringly low. And we ended up partnering with a great firm out of Seattle called Code.org, who is really driving computer science education nationally, and they had no presence in Indiana. So in many ways, we became kind of their Indiana agent, their Indiana partner. And it was a classic, you don't know what you don't know. We knew so little about education, curriculum development, even computer science, but we met with principals, superintendents, teachers, students, and really realized we could move the needle for the state of Indiana if we increased the technical aptitude for our young people and offered them more opportunity. So the team, Nate, has just done an extraordinary job over the last 9 or 10 years. And I'll give you a couple of the accomplishments. Through working with Governor Holcomb and our wonderful leaders at the State House, we passed a bill that made it a requirement for K through 12 schools to offer a computer science class. And that's in action and enacted now. So near 100% of our schools offer computer science, which is really incredible. Yeah. And for Nextech, we offer programming for students, but our primary motion is training and enabling teachers. A new bill was passed that will be enacted in the next 2 or 3 years that'll actually make it a graduation requirement for high school that you've taken at least one computer science class. We're one of only 4 or 5 states that's kind of out on the leading edge. So I'm really, really proud of the work we've been doing. And no doubt that's going to fuel a lot of tech innovation going forward. And a lot of these young students are going on to colleges and studying technology and computer science, or at least they have a base foundational aptitude in coding and design thinking and cybersecurity and all that good stuff.
It's wonderful. It sounds like you're playing a role in the development of the workforce of the future, which is just
and the state's been so supportive. Nextech received incredible support from the state, and in many ways we're their training partner to go into all these schools through every county and really identify and train teachers.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So I want to talk about your community engagement, and you've been absolutely a community leader and participated in so many different ways. You were on the Super Bowl host committee, which of course we're all proud of what we accomplished on that front. The chair for many years of the Indiana Sports Corporation. You're involved in CICP, as you mentioned, and many, many more. But talk a minute about why civic engagement has been important to you and maybe what that's meant to you.
It's meant so much to me, Nate. I think going all the way back to when I moved to Indianapolis in 2001 to start ExactTarget, I just found everyone I met with was kind, thoughtful, helpful, and happy to get me engaged and introduce me to 3, 4, 5 other people that they thought could be a good resource for me. So I was really struck by the ability to build relationships and how well this community worked together. And then I was asked to join the Sports Corp board, which was wonderful because I have a deep love of sports. And then was given the opportunity to chair the host committee, beyond the host committee, and chair all marketing functions under Allison Melancton and Mark Miles. And I think, Nate, that was my big light bulb moment of just how powerful community engagement can be. And what a wonderful experience it is for those who are getting involved to give of their time and their talent and learn new leadership skills and just all the powerful ways that our community and so many different organizations come together, and you start to really see firsthand the the talent, the drive, the determination. I think I think our superpower in our community is how well we work together
Yeah.
across differences or maybe different political parties. And I just had a front row seat to just how magnificent the Super Bowl was and the dedication of Allison Melanchthon, who spent 4 or 5 years of her life, working up to this magical one game and 2 week experience throughout Indiana. And, the adage of more than a game was very, very much the focus. And what I loved was just a high standard of excellence and an incredible amount of creativity around how can we increase the scope and the impact of the work we were doing, from everything from training every hospitality worker in the city of Indianapolis around super service to breast cancer research and, knitting of the scarves and, just on and on. So that's really was a big light bulb experience for me, where I just wanted to be a bigger part of the community. I wanted to contribute in any way I could. And I felt a sense of connectivity that I think you would probably not feel in many bigger cities around the country.
Yeah. I can remember Super Bowl. One thing that sticks in my memory is it's early February and it was about 65 degrees. That didn't hurt our efforts either.
Everything went our way. Everything went our way. And it was really fun. This was when social media was really coming of age, and our vision was to be the most digitally connected Super Bowl in history. We had the first Super Bowl social media center, and got a chance to give a lot of NFL dignitaries tours of what we were building. And it was just special to really try to innovate and set a new standard for how to host a Super Bowl.
Yeah. Well, Scott, we've made it to off the record speed round, where
okay, outstanding.
Offer you some questions, and you try to give me somewhat quick answers. I'll leave it to you.
I'll do my best.
So, your favorite movie?
Boy, with 4 daughters and my wonderful wife Erin, I generally kind of watch what they've got on Nate. So our Christmas tradition is White Christmas, so I know that'll be coming up here in the next week or so. And then I'd say School of Rock is probably one of my favorites. I love Jack Black. Yeah,
good one. Favorite place to vacation?
I love Europe. And this year I was able to go over to Paris and get a chance to experience the Olympics, and also played a little golf in Scotland. So I would say Europe is always probably top on my list. And then we have a long history of going down to Sanibel Island down in Florida, and that's a special place for us as well.
Neat. Favorite musical artist?
Train is a standout because we actually booked Train for our ExactTarget user conference before Hey Soul Sister came out, and they really kind of hit it big. So I've always been a big fan of Train. And then, boy, you have to admire Taylor Swift and just the impact she's had all around the world. And then it was really fun just to see the joy in my daughters, getting a chance to see Taylor Swift live, and just the impact on Indianapolis. So there's a lot of good reasons to admire her work.
For sure. What is the first thing you do in the morning?
Brush my teeth and have a cup of coffee, I would say. And I like catching up on email, and I like kind of reading the news before the day gets started.
Title of the last book you read?
I'm reading Outlive right now, which is a really great book around kind of longevity and how to improve health in our country. So that's a good one.
Are you getting some good tips?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
No question.
What food can you not live without?
Salmon's probably my favorite. Wedge salad and salmon would definitely be my go-to dinner order.
Athlete you admire most?
I'm a big tennis player, and developed a really wonderful friendship with Rajiv Ram from Indianapolis.
Cromwell guy,
I
right?
really admire Raj. He's a world-class athlete. Has won 5 or 6 majors, just won another silver medal over in Paris, yet he's so humble and kind and down to earth, and really cares about youth development, cares about giving back to the community. So Raj is pretty high on my list.
That's neat. Best advice you ever received?
I've been thinking a lot about Jim Morris, here at the end of the year, Nate, and I listened to your podcast with Jim, which is just a pure treasure. For anyone listening, switch over immediately and listen to the Jim Morris episode. It's just full of such grace and inspiration. And I'll paraphrase advice that I'm sure he provided to you, me, and so many others, which is his definition of leadership is viewing your role in the largest context possible. And I think that's just brilliant advice of, all of us go to work every day. We try to have an impact, and to elevate your thinking around how can you, through your work and your friendships, make the biggest impact possible. I think that's pretty incredible advice.
Yeah, I do too. Advice for a young person who wants to make a difference in their community.
I think it starts with relationships and friendships. So I encourage young people to, build as many friendships and relationships as you can. Don't be afraid to ask for help. I think often young professionals are shy or bashful about maybe reaching out or asking for assistance. And I think we have such a helpful and supportive community and culture that people really, really do want to help, because all of us had so much help and support along the way. And then I would say also just advice around just show up. I think 80% of success in life is just kind of showing up, put in the work, put in the effort, and stretch yourself. That's when the best learning happens. I think when you stretch yourself and you put yourself maybe in some uncomfortable situations.
Good advice. Okay, here's the big one.
Okay.
IU Notre Dame football score. That's going to happen tomorrow. Our podcast won't air for probably a few weeks, but let's see how good you are.
A lot of pressure on this prediction, Nate. So of course I've got to select IU as the winner. I think we've got two high-powered offenses, but really good defenses also, and going into kind of frigid weather. So let's see here. Boy, I hope I'm right. I'm going to go IU 27, Notre Dame 20.
Nice. Scott, this has been an absolute pleasure, a lot of fun. Thank you for being on the Indiana 250 podcast, and really thank you for all that you've done for our community, our state. You've been absolutely engaged on so many fronts, and we can't thank you enough for it.
Nate,
Scott.
thank you. So much more to accomplish, and thank you and the IBJ for all the remarkable work you do in our community. You all do an incredible job just surfacing I think the success and the wonderful people that really are doing great work in our community and care about making life better for all Hoosiers. So let's keep it rolling.
Thanks so much. So good to see you. Thank you. To learn more about other leaders on IBJ Media's Indiana 250 list, go to indiana250.com and look for a Page 2 feature each week in IBJ. We'll be back with the new Indiana 250 off-the-record conversation soon.